Hey guys, what's up? This is Francisco, right here with Valorizo Capital, and today I'm gonna bring you the weekly watch list for the week of February 22nd, 2022. And here in my screen, I have the Nasdaq. I have the Nasdaq Futures, the NQ, which is the mini futures for the Nasdaq 100. And as you can see right here, we're basically getting hammered to the downside on increasing volume in the past days, and we can see clearly that the Nasdaq is taking out the lows from the follow through day that we had right here. So right now we're trading below that, and I don't think there's any reason to think that this market cannot go lower. I know there's a lot of people in FinTweet, a lot of people in Twitter saying that the market has corrected a lot and there's a lot of bearishment in the market, but things can go much lower than everybody thinks. And right now the charts, they're clearly breaking down here to the downside. Perhaps we get an event in which we undercut this level and tomorrow we rally perhaps into a falling 8 exponential moving average. But I think, in my opinion, that will just be another opportunity for us to get short and continue to look for lower lows in this market. As we were mentioning last week, right? We fell at a 200 SMA. We did it in increasing volume. We had a bearish engulfing bar, and of course, we made a lower high in this market. So even though we rally, we retrace only 50% of the move, but we continue to be below all the key moving averages that I watch, and I continue to think that the path of least resistance continue to be to the downside. So before going into the watch list for the week, I'm just gonna do a quick check of the setups that we were talking about last week. And the first one is Apple, which I think that it continues to be actionable. Of course, with the market gapping down, perhaps this is gonna gap down much lower tomorrow, and it's going to be in a position that perhaps is going to be a little bit tricky to manage risk. So first of all, Apple, we were talking about Apple as soon as it bust the 50 daily moving average, and we can see that we move down and we basically rally in declining volume to a declining 50 daily moving average, and now we can see that we're getting rejected in increasing volume. So I think there's a high probability that Apple is going to take out this level here and fill the gap all the way down to 159.22. Now let's move into the next name that we have here. We have Adobe. That was a pretty nice winner for us. If you were looking at the weekly watch list, we were talking about Adobe breaking down below this level in increasing volume, and we mentioned that any rally to that level or to the declining 8 exponential moving average will be an opportunity for us to get short. Adobe make a really nice move to the downside. We can see that it actually reached both of our targets, which the first one is the 1.72, and then it went all the way down to the 1618 in increasing volume. And I think that there's a high probability that Adobe will just continue to move lower, but this one was a really nice winner for the watch list. Now let's move into the next name. We have the Rgtf, and we were talking about ARC, right? We were talking about ARC right into this candle here when it got rejected on high volume, and then we actually got a rally, a failed attempt to go above that 21 exponential moving average in declining volume. And as you can see, as soon as we're breaking this level here, we're doing it in increasing volume. And I think there's a high probability that ARC is going to meet the target next week, right here into 60.50, and perhaps even go all the way to 58, which is an unfilled gap that we have all the way back here. So ARC looking pretty nice to the downside. And one trick that I want to mention for you guys, if you are not used to look at bearish charts, just turn the chart around, right? Yeah, do yourself a favor, turn the chart around. You can see that we here had a really nice consolidation, right? And really nice ascending triangle. We broke to the upside, and we're now having the same thing, this ascending triangle breaking to the downside as well. So if you're not used to watching these charts, just turn them around. Just turn the chart around, and you will see that you will find the same patterns going into the other way. Now let's go into the next name, and here I have CRM, and of course you can see because we mentioned CRM in this bar right here when we were testing these lows. We talk about that any move down the lows is a shortable move. Of course, we got this try attempt of a rally into a declining exponential moving average, and that was the perfect entry for a continuation lower. First target of 200 was already met, and now we're seeing that the next target of 190.84 is about to be met perhaps next week, or perhaps at the open if the futures continue to trade lower. Now moving into the last name from last week watch list, and it was Microsoft. We were talking about Microsoft when it buzzed the 200 daily moving average. We can see that it did it on increasing volume, and then as you can see, this pattern repeats itself, right? We get that move to the downside, we rally into a declining 8 exponential moving average on declining volume, and as you can see that we got rejected on increasing volume. And I think there's a high probability that Microsoft is going to move all the way down here and perhaps even take out these lows and continue to move lower. So that is for the last week. I think that most of these charts continue to be actionable as I continue to expect more downside. Now let's move into this weekly watch list. First name that I have here for you is the IGB. IGB is the ETF that tracks the software, all the software names that we know, right? We know Net, we know Microsoft, we know all the names, right? We know Bill, all those kind of names, which I think that are getting ready for another move lower. We can basically just trade here the IGB, and we can see kind of the same pattern, right? We have the strong move to the downside. We actually bounced on that follow through day. We had the higher low. We made an attempt to move higher, but you can see that we got clearly rejected on increasing volume right here. And then the 21 exponential moving average came up and become resistance. And that was the trigger for this setup to the downside. And we can see that we are starting to break out below this level. I continue to think that this is actionable. If you just turn the chart around, you can see that this is attempting a breakout on really interesting volume to the downside. And I think that if IGB breaks to the downside, the next level will be 310, and then I'll be looking at 295 right here to the downside. And just turn the chart around, you can see that we actually have this kind of head and shoulders kind of pattern, and now we're breaking out of this shelf, and I expect more and more downside in the IGB. Now let's go into my next name. I have here RIOT. I think that Ethereum and Bitcoin are setting out for moves lower. And one of the names that I that I think of shorting here is RIOT. And as you can see here, that RIOT already buzzed this trend line. We're trading below here. We're doing it in increasing volume. And right, we're below a declining 50. The 8 and 21 exponential moving average are attempting to cross bearishly. And my first target looking down here for my riot position will be a move all the way here into the 786, which is 1460. And if we get lucky, perhaps we even get a move all the way down to 1290, or perhaps even a break lower. So that is looking really nice in Riot. And of course, if you want to trade other names, I think that Mara and even Coin are some really interesting names to also trade to the downside. And if we just take a really quick look to Ethereum, right? Let's just take a really quick look. You can see that Ethereum, right? We can see that Ethereum is getting rejected right here at the 50, right? We were talking about this last week, right? We were talking that Ethereum went all the way to the downside and now was testing this 50 daily moving average, and we can see that Ethereum is getting rejected at those levels, and now it continues to move lower as it breaks through this trend line. So I think there's a high probability that Ethereum is going to at least going to retest these lows, and that means that some of the names that are involved with crypto will probably continue to trade lower as well. Now let's move into the next chart. We have Tesla. And right, we can see that Tesla, right, pretty weak action from Tesla, right, we have this move, Tesla hold at 200, but you can see here that Tesla is just getting rejected at a declining 21 exponential moving average, and we're getting declining on increasing volume. And we can see that right now Tesla continues to close above the 618 level, but as soon as Tesla busts this 200 daily moving average, is going to trigger another entry for a short position, and my first target will be all the way down to 750. And perhaps if we get lucky, Tesla will move all the way down to 700. And of course, if you don't want to use these, and if you weren't able to use these entries for your position, you can use the 200 and use this moving average as your covering guide. Now let's move into the next setup, and I have the SMH here, right, which is the SMH. For those of you guys who don't know, the SMH is the ETF for all the chip makers, right? And we have we have AMD, we have Nvidia, we have LRCX, we have AMAT, and all those kind of names. And if we just make a quick tour to those names, right? We go to AMAT really quickly here. We can see that AMAT, right? We can see pretty clear a bear flag pattern here, right, on increasing volume to the downside. If we go to the next name, which is LRCX, which is also another name that I follow, you can see a really clear bear flag that is basically attempting to follow to the downside. If we go through, let's go through Nvidia, and you can see here that we also have this kind of a pattern of a bear flag here as we get rejected at the 50. I think this is getting ready to move lower. And of course, if you want to check the other name that we have, right, we can take a quick look at AMD. And AMD is basically failing. I have a couple of levels here that I was watching, and you can see that Nvidia is just holding that 200 MA by by little. But of course, we kind of have this bear flag pattern as well. So of course you can trade the individual names, but a way that I like to trade so that you don't get involved in any news from the company is just I just go through the ETF, right? If I have many names that look like bearish flags, I just go through the ETF, and you can see that we have really increasing volume pointing to the downside. We are trading below a 200 daily moving average, and I expect the SMH to test these levels right here at 250, and then perhaps make a move to 240 if we get lucky with that. And then the last name that I have for you guys is the IWO, which is the growth ETF. And you can see basically kind of the same pattern, right? We had this strong move to the downside, and now we were trying to get above this pivot. We got rejected. You can see the increasing volume. This is a selling. This is a selling candle right here, right? We open, we move all the way to the pivot, and then we basically close below that 21 exponential moving average. We close at the lows, and we do it in increasing volume. That usually suggests that sellers continue to be in control, and that any rally to make a lower low, a lower high, is actually an opportunity to get short and look for more downside in the market. And if you just turn this chart around, right, this is a pretty easy pattern to follow, right? We have this breakout, we have the move up, then we have the consolidation, and now we're having the inverse head and shoulders pattern, right? And as soon as we have that, as soon as we break out of this shelf, I think it's gonna be really easy for sellers to take this all the way down to 225. So that's basically what I'm looking in the IWO. I continue to think that there's gonna be more downside in this market, and I like this target right here because this is the breakout level of the 2020 breakout. So I think there's a high probability that this is just a retracement in a downtrend, and now we're getting ready for the next leg lower. So I suggest, guys, that you do your best to position yourself correctly in the market. I think that there's a lot of chance that we will continue to get more downside. I know that there's a lot of people saying that there's a lot of bearishment in the market. There's a lot of participants who are short and whatever, but the charts are telling the story. The charts are telling the story. Volume is telling the story. There's more volume to the downside, right? There's more volume to the downside. The patterns point for more downside. So I don't think there's any reason to fight it, right? Perhaps tomorrow we get a relief rally in the market, but look for any of those relief rallies to be opportunities to get short and continue to look for more downside. I think that there's no reason to think that the Nasdaq has done correcting, right? Even though we have corrected somewhere around 19% already, almost 20%, right? Remember that all of this move that we have, that we had, was on all the narrative of QE, right? So right now that the market has changed, the environment has changed its structure. Most of the times we go through cycles, right? We go through the advance cycle, then we go through the distribution cycle, and now we're going into the decline cycle. And it's pretty normal for the market to go much lower than any participant thinks. And I think there's a high probability that we will just continue and perhaps test 13,000 in the Nasdaq 100. And then after that, we'll see. But of course, the market doesn't care what I think, and it will just do what it does best, which is surprise everyone. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, leave a comment, uh, and let me know what you think of the setups that I'm sharing with you. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I wish you a very successful trading week, and just remember, If you don't know how to trade the market shorts, cash is king, and just remember to preserve your mental capital. But I think that if you just turn the charts around, you will see that it's basically the same thing, but to the other side. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Like and subscribe. Cheers.